What's up, everybody? This is the Rabbit Hedgehog, and
I am Foolish Savage Furioso.
or Mr. Buttersworth, or whoever we want to call. We got to work on his name. Feel free to leave that in the comments. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the recent ride event we did at Oklahoma Honda Suzuki in Del City. We rode multiple different Suzuki motorcycles. Some of them we did in common, a couple of them we did kind of separate apart. So, basically, let's talk about the good bikes. So the first good bike that we both obviously loved to death was the SV650. Let's put in a couple of videos that shows both of our reactions, and that way you can see live what happened on the motorcycle.
It's torquey at the very jump, and then like once it gets going, it's just so smooth. It just feels so weird because it's so tiny. My legs, that feels like there's not even much of a thing that's in between. Oh man, but this is fun. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this thing right now. It feels so smooth. Oh my gosh, this is honestly hilarious. Like whenever I'm just kind of moving around, it's so simple and so easy to maneuver. That is oh, for such a tiny little bike, it's so much fun. It really is. I enjoy this thing.
Alrighty, first impressions of this little motorcycle is that it's got a little spirited engine. This little 650 has a lot of torque in the lower end. It feels really good to ride, actually. And this bike just feels really good. The suspension on these roads are very broken, so you get a good feel for it really fast. The suspension is not adjustable in the front whatsoever, preload only in the back, but the dampeners are doing a very good job of getting this bike around. I mean, it's a very stiff suspension. We have a traditional style fork even, and I have to say that nice and firm suspension on the front end, very good suspension on the rear, and we're doing great on this thing. I mean, it actually is handling just fine. Nice!
So as you can tell, the SV650 was a fantastic motorcycle. It's very lightweight. The little 650 engine is very torquey, powerful, and actually smooth, very good ride. So it's like a refined but very basic motorcycle, which is something that I enjoy the most. I tend to like a simplistic, easy to use, no electronics, no frills, no ABS necessarily, no traction control, just straightforward, pure motorcycle, and that's what that SV650 was. And it's a bike you could use basically every day.
I honestly enjoyed it, the fact that how light it was. When I first got onto the bike, that was the very thing I noticed. I was sitting there, I was like, am I riding a motorcycle or am I riding a bicycle? Because of how light it was. And then once I started going, it was just perfection for what it was. It felt like to me someone got the idea of the Grom or the 125 from Kawasaki and just slapped a 650 engine on it with that lightweight and just made it work. And by far one of the most fun motorcycles that they had at that event.
And the funny part is, it's not even that incredibly light. It actually weighs 420 pounds, which is shocking because when you're on that motorcycle, it feels much, much less than that. Felt like it was somewhere in the 300s instead. So that was actually very impressive. I like the way it wore its weight. And the lean angles, the flickability of the chassis, it was just a fantastic little motorcycle. Something that, like I said, you could definitely take everywhere you want to go, especially city riding. You know, that'd be perfect to just bomb around the city with. And then if you want to go carve some canyons, perfect for that too. It's just one of those bikes that's an all-arounder, but really kind of being a smaller frame, not a full touring or anything like that, but definitely one you can take out for a fun ride.
And surprisingly, it does get out on the highway very well. It can take, like I said earlier, it's street, it can go on highway, it can take curves. It's just one of the most beautiful motorcycles, and it's actually relatively cheap and at a good price standpoint. And for a 2018 model. I think it's sitting at right now for 6,500.
Actually, 71.
Or
70.99 is what its MSRP was. So that's still not incredibly expensive. There's still, 650s out there with much more price tags on them. I mean, for goodness sake, it's only slightly more than the Harley Street 500, which is not even close to that motorcycle. I mean, it's between both the Street 500 and the Street 750, but to me it outperforms that motorcycle by a long shot, and it looks much better. The more modern steel trellis frame, of course, I love the way that black and red contrasted on that particular bike. Black wheel or blackout on the regular paints and tins, and then the red on the frame and the wheels. It just made it pop. It was a good looking bike, and definitely a fun one to ride. And then another good motorcycle that we rode, and this is both of us got a chance to, was the V-Strom 650 motorcycle, which hilariously, of course, is the same engine that's on the SV650. So it's the adventure touring variant of it, and that was a very fun to ride motorcycle as well. It did very good on the highway, did very good on the road as well. But that one is a bike that is tailored to going a further distance. It has a larger gas tank. It sits differently. You're more in a proper standard riding position, touring position, basically. So you're there for comfort. And I had another buddy that rode it with his wife on the back, and he actually liked it more than the 1000. Even with her on the back of it, but we'll get into the 1000 later. So let's take a look at the V-Strom 650 real quick, and we'll get our ride reviews here.
This bike is actually surprisingly very comfortable. The throttle is pretty sensitive. It's not very torquey because it's a 650, but we haven't really gotten much to go. It's highly windy out here today. Ooh, engine braking is quite responsive, so that is very, very nice. The suspension is honestly the best thing about this bike. Like, any bumps that come through, I don't feel it. Like, I'm seeing some of the guys in front of me a little bit here now, like, you'll see them shake a lot more than I do. This thing that is the one thing I absolutely do love about this. The mirrors are in a good solid position. I can see pretty much everything behind me and it's clear. Like, there's no like shift or shakiness from the mirrors themselves at all. It's just that's honestly lovely. I really love that. Even though it's not as powerful as some of these other monstrosities that are around here, it is good. Like, it blocks wind really well. It's really enjoyable. The shifting is smooth. Like, it's incredibly smooth. I've been looking for like a sports adventure touring style bike for a while, and this is something I would probably have to consider at some point.
Just nice little push on the bar right there, and goes in very nicely. No bind in the middle, just as you can see, she's just ready to move. I just love the way this thing feels. Super, super compliant. Feeling is really good. See, that's the thing that kills it on the 1000. The feeling on the engine is just terrible. It doesn't really feel very good at all. It feels like it's chugging the whole time, even if you're in a lower gear, revving her out feels like it's chugging. Oh, here we go. That's a little bit better engine braking than that first time I did that. There we go. Okay, we got some decent engine braking. I was going to say, this is a V-twin. It should. I love the way this thing feels. It's super light, comfortable, laid back riding. Transmission is spot on.
So after riding the V-Strom 650, this was actually the first ride that I did at the event, because they, at the time, said I was too much of a baby rider to not ride any of the leader bikes. But we quickly got that resolved. But when I got to ride the 650 V-Strom, I thoroughly enjoyed this thing. It was the first bike that I ever got to ride as an adventure tourer, And so I wasn't used to how tall it was, but once I got adjusted, everything was just fun. It had a comfortable seat. Actually, one of the most comfortable seats that I've ever been on, but I haven't been on very many bikes. So, it had great throttle input. The clutch control was great. So it had no issues there, unlike its bigger brother. We'll get to that. I just don't know what else to say about it because it was a fun little bike.
Yeah, what I liked about it was it truly is designed for the tourer because it had a very simple to do preload adjuster on the side. You literally could just reach down and spin that bad boy, get that preload adjusted for the bigger guys. It's not an adjustable front fork by any means, but really simple to use preload adjustment, and the suspension was very competent on the road. It didn't feel like you're getting that chatter that you can normally get from them. And that fixed fairing up front actually did a decent job of getting most of the wind off of you. The only thing that I ever felt was a buffet at the top of the helmet, but it was like 93 degrees, which with 93 degrees, you have your inlets up there for your helmet, and you're pulling in cool air, which that didn't matter. That was fine at that point, but that's the only thing I could really complain about is it doesn't have a tall enough windscreen to fix that buffet for taller riders on the top of their helmet. But like I said, there's a trade-off there because then you get that cooler air still coming into your helmet, and that way you can have it. And the way it was set up, I mean, the fueling was very good on it. The motor did not ever feel like it was being bogged down or anything, no matter what you did. Transmission was clean, clutch was great, friction zone area was good on it. The balance of the motorcycle through turns, through everything was perfect. So that bike truly is. Put a couple of saddlebags on it. It already had a rack on the back of it too, and you can go long distances on that bad boy and enjoy it for a long time to come. That 650 engine's a bulletproof motorcycle engine for sure. So another motorcycle that we both rode was the worst motorcycle that we have to say, and that was its bigger brother, the V-Strom 1000. And that one was wrong for some reason or another. And let's go ahead and we'll cut to that video, and it'll be from his perspective because unfortunately their GoPro kicked out a couple of videos, and that way you can tell what was going on.
Yeah, this thing is not as peppy, which is really interesting in honesty. I thought I honestly thought that the 1000 would be a lot faster or like a lot more peppy, a lot more torquey than the 650, but on honesty, it doesn't feel like much of anything. I'm kind of surprised. It's a bit disappointing. Like, this is like really disappointing. Like, I'm not, like, for something that's just twice the size of the 650, it's not as great. Yeah, my friend, I guess, was right. Like, he didn't like this bike, and I honestly don't really care for it either. Like, I don't really care for it. I honestly, I want to go back to the 650.
I mean, we have great acceleration. Like I said, it just, so much vibrations coming through this engine, it feels like it's being worked when really it should not be. Now, when you're on the highway, there's proof that it's not being worked. You're doing 74, 75 miles an hour, and you're barely over 4,000 RPM. So, I mean, it's impressively decent pull. I mean, low RPM, meaning he's got decent power. It just, for some reason, it just does not feel as refined or as clean as a lot of the adventure bikes. Even the F800 GS I rode a few weeks back, yeah, it was buzzy. It had vibrations like this one does, but it was still a more smooth, more refined machine, and definitely one that was above this one in how it played. So I would say, if you find a good F800 GS, that'd be a fun one to pick up, but this one is cheaper, and this one's not bad, but I just can't fully recommend the V-Strom 1000 as something I would ride every day, something I would play with, because the Tiger is just so much better. The F800 is better. There's so many other better bikes. The Moto Guzzi Stelvio is a much more fun bike than this one. This one just feels so old and outclassed, and the Super Tenere is even better. So I've rode a lot of adventure bikes, and I mean, this is the first time I've been on the V-Strom, and I have to say that I'm not 100% impressed.
So on that V-Strom 1000, the weirdest thing is the fueling was so bad on that motorcycle. No matter what, whenever you gave it gas, no matter what gear you were in, no matter what speed you were at, the thing felt like it was bogging down for some reason. Constantly just shaking itself for, I can't figure out why. I don't know if it was the demo bike or what was going on with it, because that's the only V-Strom 1000 I've ever been on. And of course this is a redesign too for 2018. And if that's the redesign, they really need to look at that engine one more time and try to get that thing smoothed out and figure out how to refine it. The suspension is adjustable on everything on it, and of course I can't give you a good idea because I wasn't able to adjust it, of course, to my weight. They have it set for that centerline rider, but it was still competent. I mean, when you look at the bike itself, it did good in most everything, but the engine response, the transmission was wonky because the way they had the clutch set up, the friction zone was further out than normal, and then first to second was this strange mess where you went to go into second gear and you'd always hit neutral almost instantaneously, no matter how far you pulled up on the lever, until you really just pretty much took your leg and like ripped it up, and then it would finally go into second. And that was kind of annoying. If you're going to be off-road, you want your transmission to be smooth. If you're going to be on-road and touring, you want your transmission to be smooth. So what really bothered me about that motorcycle was how off it felt, because I have rode many ADV bikes, many different ones. The GS series, the Tigers, everything that's been out there from Honda, and the Super Tenere. I mean, it's just those bikes all have a level of refinement that cannot be explained, and you ride them and you enjoy them, and they're smooth and effortless, and you can get out on off-road and be confident and not worry about the engine. But when you're sitting there and you feel bogged or something's wrong, you know, you get more worried. I mean, the Multistrada, which is the most street version I've ever rode of a dual sport, literally still felt better because it was smooth, refined, and if you went off-road, even with those smaller tires, you wouldn't feel as scared because you know the engine was there and what you could do with it. So the V-Strom was just wrong for some reason. I don't know why. I think it might be missing that refinement all the other ones in the class have.
The entire time when I was riding it, I kept on wondering what is wrong with this bike. Now, he rode it before me, and I thought he was joking when he said he didn't like this bike. And
I did that with the R9T, so.
Yeah, so I thought, it was like, oh, he's joking. You know? And then he's like, no, I'm being dead serious. So I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to give this bike the benefit of the doubt. About 10 minutes in, I just started getting more frustrated with the darn thing because, like I said, actually what he said about the clutch control, where that friction zone, it's at the very edge of the bike, so I'm sitting there trying to rev it up and to keep it from stalling, and then so the people behind me are sitting there like waiting for me to go, and I'm trying to give it as much finesse so I either don't give it too much torque, because the bike has a lot of torque but it has no horsepower to back it up. It's a weird feeling. I honestly enjoyed the 650 much more, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
the entire time it's just like, what happened to you?
I agree. It's like everybody says there's no replacement for displacement. In this case, the V-Strom 650 absolutely just wipes the floor with the 1000. So
the on the gears, as he was talking about going from 1 to 2, it's like you go 1, break your foot, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and that was fine. But then just the 1 to 2, what happened? To this day, I'm kind of scratching my head, just trying to figure out what the heck happened to this bike. It died somewhere.
Wouldn't say died. I just think that
it just got dropped off the cliff somewhere.
and it could be because it's the first year after redesign. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they got some improvements to make, or something happened at a later or earlier demo event, and it may have been dropped, and maybe something's hurt. Maybe a lever was off. We don't know. With that particular variant, and that's the thing though, there was 3 of us that rode it, and unfortunately the third one couldn't come up here. He rode it by himself, came back, was like, it was not impressive at all. I hated that thing. Mm-hmm. He got on the 650 and even carried a passenger and came back giggling and loving the 650, and even his wife approved of it because of how comfortable it was and everything. So you're sitting there going, okay, there's something with that bike when 3 people all agree there's something wrong with it.
I only had one person disagree with me, and he said because I was too small, that's why I didn't like the bike, and I just kind of laughed.
But he was the Suzuki rep, so that was his job.
Okay.
So that was the problem. He was trying to tell you that no, there's something different. But like I said, guys, it doesn't do anything horribly wrong.
No.
It just feels, with everything out there that's much more refined as the ADV segment grows and becomes more popular, this bike feels very heavily outclassed, and that's a big problem for Suzuki. They need to step it up and get up there. Maybe even think about doing a parallel system in there, parallel twin, maybe something to smooth it out. But they need to figure out a way to get the torque and the horsepower to match out and make sure that thing doesn't feel bogged the way it did, because it's weird in every gear and every speed. It just the way that engine felt just never felt like it was happy, and that's kind of a strange thing. So,
and that was actually the bike that they finally allowed me to jump onto a 1000 cc. So, and I kind of wish I didn't ride that thing. Good thing we got on video.
well, you did get a shot at the GSX 1000, which is your bike's bigger brother. Definitely. Which, unfortunately, the video died on that one, and that was more of a battery issue. So we didn't have a chance to swap out before he took off, and I didn't know if the battery would last long enough. I should have just benefited of the doubt and pulled that thing and slapped that next battery in for him. But what do you think of the GSX 1000?
Honestly, I love that thing. Like, I kind of wish I like went back in time, just said, let me get the GSX 1000 and ride this. It felt exactly like my own personal bike, which is the GSX 750. But the only difference is it had a lot more power to go with it. So this thing would get up and go. I think in first gear, I was almost hitting 70 something miles per hour. Jump to second gear, you're hitting 90.
I did that with the 73 is about what I hit when I rode it a few years back when it first came out. And the thing is, you're younger, you probably don't need the 1000.
No.
Not for the fact that you wouldn't mistreat it, it's the fact that your insurance man will come to your door and gingerly take you to the, well, we won't go to that. So we just put it this way, the insurance cost on you would be horrifyingly bad.
Unfortunately.
And the 750 is a good place for you. And let's be honest, the 750 is such a well-balanced motorcycle.
Oh, yes.
And probably one of the most bulletproof engines in the industry, and most well-rounded. It has almost the power of many leader bikes out there, and that says enough about that engine. So
yeah, honestly, when I was on the bike, it felt like I was on home, but 2.0 because I didn't know if the video was going to still go on, and halfway through the video, if it wasn't even running, I was just sitting there in silence because it just felt like I was riding my own bike because it was just so smooth, but it just had just that extra more like the oomph to it, like the power for it. It just had that going for it, and I'm just smiling the entire time, just enjoying the ride and not even talking. So I called it the moment of silence of awesomeness because it was just flat out enjoyable.
And then another bike that you rode that I didn't get a chance to throw a leg over was the GSX-R 600.
Oh yeah, that one. So unfortunately, we weren't able to play a little bit more with this bike. We had to compared to this event to a previous event with the BMWs. The lead riders kind of took it more relaxed and following the speed limits, maybe a little bit more like 10 or 20 more than the speed limit, but still not a lot of playroom. This thing, at first when I got on it, I felt like I was being folded into origami because it was so small, and I was tucked in, the bars were really low, and that's standard for a typical sports bike. Like the first thing I noticed was how like my hands were cramping because all that weight I was pushing forward onto the bike. The odd thing about it was the seat was actually very comfortable. So I was like, seat, I'm comfy, hands, not so much. But once we actually got going and onto the highway, and instead of the street where we were doing stops and goes, it got more comfortable as the wind actually pushed me back up off the bars, and I was able to pretty much breathe and let this bike just coast at a nice 70 miles per hour at like 4,000 RPM, and it still had 13,000 to go. So I wanted to play with this bike. I wanted to see a little bit more of what this thing could do, but unfortunately I couldn't pass anyone. I couldn't pass the lead rider especially. And so, but when it got up and going up to 60 miles per hour, it got there quick. And it will do it. I think it's honestly a lot faster than my GSX 750. But it's not something I would recommend for new riders to ever ride. But if you're looking for something fast, if you want to ride on the highway most of the time, this is something I would definitely suggest.
And we actually got working video of that, so we'll cut to that here real fast, so that way you can get live on the bike reaction.
Here's the thing. The seating position is very folded in. I mean, you are tucked in deep. So that's something that's to be expected with a traditional, well, not a traditional, but a true sports bike. So once you get up and going, it's actually really smooth. Where the forks are, it's not very comfortable, but I mean, heck, that's kind of standard and typical for these types of bikes. One thing I'm surprised about is the seat itself is actually really comfy. Now, the leaning forward is not comfortable because you're putting a lot of weight like toward the front. You know, you're digging in, but it is definitely very comfortable in the seat itself. You just kind of like tuck in and hug, like you just hug everything. So you hug everything, and it's just it's honestly wonderful. Like, again, like my only complaint about this bike is just being kind of like pushed forward a lot. Other than that, it's really nice.
All right, so a couple of bikes that I did on this event that he didn't have a chance to ride was I went ahead and did the Boulevard M90, which, you know, is a M90 stands for 90 cubic inches, so about 1,500 cc. So pretty decent sized cruiser. Of course, the whole big thing of that is it is a big cruiser. I mean, big gas tank, just everything's so spread out, so wide. And, the video survived this one, so we'll get a full review on this one as well. But it was kind of an interesting, like, backwards cruiser. I could not figure out that engine at all because it loved to be strung out. Like, it loved to be revved. It did not love to be cruised. And that was kind of interesting to me, that you'd hit first gear and it would actually get up to speed in about 40 miles an hour in first gear, which is pretty decent for a cruiser. Pop it in a second, and you had plenty of room to go as well. And it was just smoothed out every time it was in its higher RPM range. But the stupid thing, just every time you go, like in city riding, 40, 45 miles an hour, jump to third, you just see the whole thing start to shake. And the more shaking you did, you get to fifth gear. And then you just watch the whole gas tank and mirrors and everything just start shaking itself to death. So you went right back down to second gear so you get that smoothness back. So that was an interesting engine design to me, because the M109R is so much different, so much more powerful, so much more smooth in all operating areas, that I love that motorcycle. That was a fantastic motorcycle. This one I'm kind of in between on, because there's going to be people that find an engine like that more fun, where they're revving her out, having a good time on her, and it does turn decently. I mean, it's a decent chassis, but I don't know. It's just for a cruiser, that was kind of weird that it liked to be strung out a little bit more versus just cruising. So we'll cut to that video right now and we'll get that initial reaction.
Man, it's a comfortable motorcycle. So this is a bike that what you will do is you'll purchase it, throw in a couple of saddlebags and a sissy bar for the lady, and take it for a nice ride around the countryside and enjoy it. Because it's definitely one of those bikes you can do that with. It's definitely one that you can just nicely cruise around town, but put some bags on it and take it for a nice long ride at the same time, because it will accept it. Definitely not bad for it at all. So, would I buy this bike? Nah. This isn't one that I would necessarily buy because it's, you know, I have bikes that don't do everything this one does. But is it a bike I would recommend if you're looking for something as a nice cruiser to just go around town with and actually have fun stoplight to stoplight, and definitely impress some people with this thing's ability to rev out in low gears and take off? Then that'd be fun to do. And also throw on a couple of saddlebags while you're at it and take her for a long trip, because this bike likes to actually go down through some canyons, get some good twists in. Very light on its feet. Just it's a joy to ride, easy to get along with, loves to be revved out. Not necessarily one I would do because, you know, I'm kind of looking for that more standard bike these days, or an adventure tourer or something that I can do long range on that's a little bit faster than this. But it's still, this one will put a smile on your face and you can't go wrong with it. It's definitely comfortable. I mean, it does everything very, very well. I'm not going to say it does everything beyond the great, but it does everything very well. It's one of those nice all-around motorcycles that you can just get along with for a long time to come.
And last but not least, the Hayabusa. The legend, the myth itself. After so many years, the curse is still going, though. Every time I ride this stupid thing, the DR400SM is in front of me. One of the slowest freaking bikes they make. Right there. And there's nothing I can really do about it. Now, this guy actually did know how to handle it, and we did get a little bit faster on this ride. But the Hayabusa of itself is a legend. They really haven't changed very much of it. Only electronic updates on the packaging, maybe strengthening the engine here and there. But for the most part, ever since the early 2000s, this bike has remained the same. And, you know, it's one of those bikes that people have to respect because it's quick. I mean, it is lightning fast. But it's still, it's smooth. Because it's a big boned super sport or whatever you want to call it, you can actually kind of fit on it even if you're a bigger guy, and you don't fold yourself up as much. I mean, you're still on there pretty heavily on your wrist and everything, and it will tire you out until you get up to speed and you get that wind pushing you back off of it. But I mean, it is kind of an interesting bike because it's so heavy but yet so brutally quick, and it's an interesting ride. So I'll cut to that video real quick and we'll get some reaction on that one as well.
This is a bike designed for speed. It's a bike designed for you to tuck her in and definitely get some fun out of it. I mean, you really don't have to shift that much on this bike because, well, it's got all the power in the world. Cruising around at, you know, about 45 miles an hour in third gear, you're only pulling 4,000 RPMs. I mean, you're not pulling very much at all. This chassis, man, is just incredible. I mean, it really does feel like it's attached to you, like, you know, or it knows you want to turn and it just automatically goes over there for you real easily. I mean, if you get tucked in, you can definitely have some fun on this motorcycle. And like I said, I wish I had the place where I could actually have a little bit more fun than this, because I could get some serious speed on this motorcycle. But it's just such an easy to use motorcycle, for such a powerful motorcycle. It's very, as long as you treat it right, you're not going to go 12 o'clock on it. You're not going to pull anything stupid. You're going to be able to ride it. And then if you pull it hard, man, it'll treat you to something too. That's just the nature of this thing.
So in conclusion on this Suzuki riding event, it's, you know, let's talk about which one we'd put in our garage. And both of us are going to have to say the SV650. Let's be honest here. That bike is so fun. It's just so flickable, so light, so well balanced, and just such a pure motorcycle. It's one of those, it's a motorcycle for the people. I mean, let's be honest here. If I was paying attention and watched them exit the interstate, I know Oklahoma much better than all of them, so I could have just kept going and hid that thing real fast and pulled that demo sticker off and threw away the license plate and found my license plate. I would have loved to have that bike for the rest of my life because it's a bike I want in my life. It's fantastic. Now, would I replace anything I've got with it right now? No. It's going to sit next to what I have right now. It deserves to be there with everything else I have because the bikes I have right now, I love them to death, and and would never want to get rid of them. But that's a fantastic motorcycle to just add to the collection. Or if it's your first bike, definitely pick that thing up. I mean, it's not a bike that's overly powerful, but it's a bike that's got amazing power. It's actually got more power than a Ninja 650 even, and it's a V-twin. And so that means the torque and power output is much different than parallel and feels better, and it's just fantastic motorcycle.
Whenever I was riding it, the entire time I said, like, if I didn't have either my Iron 883, which I traded in for the GSX 750, I probably would have gotten this, because it is such a wonderful ride. Like, I liked it so much, I rode it twice. I had an opportunity to get on the GSX-R 1000 or the GSX 1000 like earlier. I think it was the first time I got to ride the 650, but I wanted to get the review in. But I do not regret my decision. It was a beautiful machine. And the reason why I rode it the second time, other than the fact that it was such a beautiful machine, it was the fact that I had to get the bad taste in my mouth of the V-Strom 1000. It was that bad. Like, I got continually frustrated, but as it went on.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was one of those things. And I went actually back to back. I was V-Strom 1000 right to the V-Strom 650. So that helped a lot too. So knowing that I felt both of them back to back, that helped me. So yeah,
it was odd. I went from the 650 to the 1000. I sat there, what in the world happened? So I kind of wish I did a reverse, but yeah, I would love to have a SV650 in my garage someday, and honestly, I probably will. A close second, since I would be looking at like an adventure, like a touring, would have to be that V-Strom 650. Now, this is the first time I've ever ridden any of those, so I'm not really knowledgeable out of all of them, but I really enjoyed that 650. It was smooth, it was responsive, it was fun to ride for what it was. It blocked a lot of wind, it just did everything better than its bigger brother.
And I have to agree with that, and that's the second place bike for me too, is definitely the V-Strom 650. And it is a bike I would recommend to go out there and have fun with. I mean, I can't recommend a Hayabusa. Come on, I do not like being folded like that. Every time, I mean, everybody that watches this channel knows that when I get on a sport bike, that's the first thing I say, Rabbit Hedgehog hates being folded. He likes his tacos more. So I would rather have a little bit of weight and enjoy my tacos than being folded up on a fast bike that can still, even if you're comfortably on it, will last you about an hour before you're absolutely like, okay, I'm done. Because, I mean, the Busa produced a ton of heat out of the bottom end of it. That bike had been rode all day, so by the time I got on it, both of my feet literally were in the depths of hell, being fried off from the outlets. And while the rest of me was in Oklahoma's wonderful soup of atmosphere that we had, because we had that rain that morning, 90 plus degrees, and then we had 80% humidity on top of it. So it's like I was drowning up top and burning to death on the bottom. It was not a good combination. So, like I said, I mean, when it comes to that second place bike, definitely the V-Strom, because it had been rode all day too. It wasn't burning my feet off. It wasn't burning me to death. In fact, it felt like the wind was, and the way it was channeling its heat out, I felt a little bit here and there, but that was usually at stops. But when moving, felt like it was getting out of the way pretty decent. And it's that's a great thing about a long range bike, is if it can get rid of the heat from around the rider too, helps you for long range riding. And that was another thing. The 1000, the left side was on fire too. After all day long, you could feel it burning the left side of your leg the whole time you're riding. But the 650 didn't do that. It was comfortable all the way around, very good feeling motorcycle. Same engine, of course, as the SV, just tuned differently, and it's a well put together machine. So I'm looking for that long range bike. Now, I would probably still want something a little bit more potent, like a Tiger or something like that. But I mean, you can't beat the price. You're under $10,000. It's like $9,300.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad price for it. I mean, you still get traction control, and it's really easy to cancel it out and get rid of it if you're going to hit the dirt. And that's something every adventure rider wants to have, is ease of use. If you need to adjust your preload, I mean, if you're going to be riding by yourself without any passengers or weight or anything like that, or saddlebags. Even you just grab that knob and you turn it back down. As soon as you throw some weight back on it, pop that back up. I mean, no tool adjustment.
Our friend was actually considering like getting the bike at some point, like, and his passenger loved it too, like the entire time. You just saw a smile on their face the entire time, and like, I'm so glad that I told him, was like, get on that 650. If you didn't like the 1000, try the 650, because I enjoyed that one, and I definitely regret my decision on getting the 1000 after.
Yeah,
but that's the one thing I would never have in my garage until they fix what's needed to be fixed. You need that friction zone. If it's on the very edge, that's not fun at all, and also just the power is lacking.
I wouldn't say the power's lacking. I mean, it was weird
Okay,
because
it's torquey, but it didn't have like.
It didn't feel right.
The pull.
The engine, well, it had the pull. If you really watch your speeds when you're watching the videos, you'll see that it actually climbs in speed very easily. It's just, for some reason, no matter where you were in the engine band, the engine felt like it was working, like, hard, for no particular reason. It was like, and it just didn't like what it was doing. That's the weird thing.
It got angry at you.
Yeah, it got angry to go fast, and that's, I mean, the Super Tenere is the closest engine of all the ones I mentioned to that one, but it's still a parallel, and it's about a 1200 cc. But that motorcycle did have a point where it smoothed out. It was very rough go. It feels a little bad in the lower RPMs, but once you got in the higher ones and you started revving her out, it did very well. But I mean, in some cases, that's indicative of trying to be off road. But the thing is, you need to smooth out if you're on the highway so you can have a nice, comfortable, long ride. The Tenere does that, whereas the V-Strom just felt like it was being taxed to go anywhere. Not just if it was off-road. I mean, it probably wouldn't be not much of a problem because you're not going to feel engine vibration as much when you're bouncing around on fire roads. But when you're on the highway and you're trying to get a long-range, comfortable ride, and all you feel is this engine basically
dying on you.
Not dying, but more like having an asthma attack. It's just kind of an interesting thing. It's just like I wish I had so much hopes for it, put it that way, that when I felt it, it kind of disappointed me. And it's weird. 3 for 3 that rode it, we're like, no, 650. Let's go down a notch. So. But if I was going to get a cruiser, I still wouldn't recommend the M90. I mean, unless you really want to have that high-strung fun, I'd still recommend the M109R. I know I didn't ride it this time. I rode it a few years back, but that bike has not changed in any way. That M109 is something else, but the M90 is one that I seriously wouldn't buy for myself. If you want to have fun and string her out, then do it.
I personally, I was tempted to get on the M109R, but the way they had their slant from their parking lot, it left me with an uncomfortable feeling for getting on something that's like over 500 pounds, over 550, and so that's why I didn't go on to that one or the Hayabusa. The Busa, I had too much respect for it that I just I'm not going to ride you anyway because I know what you can do. I've seen you around several times over. So it was just something that I personally didn't feel comfortable riding. And I've already had my fun of the day riding the GSX-R, and then a lot more fun when I got on my bigger brother, the GSX-1000. That would probably be the third bike I would put right next to my 750, just for fun. And even if I were to get a fourth, it would be more for track day, and it would be that GSX-R. So that V-Strom 1000 can go in a dumpster fire.
Yeah, whenever they fix it, they'll figure it out.
Until they fix it.
Yeah,
and then we'll give it some love.
I mean, as competitive as everything is, I hope they fix it. Because, I mean, even the Versus, you've got the Versus 1000, and that thing, of course, using a Ninja 1000 engine, tuned for that. That engine's potent. It's a very, like I said, I've rode so many of these ADV bikes here and there. May not have the videos, but trust me, I've been on these things. And when it comes down to it, that one just felt like the least refined, and that's why we keep dogging on it, unfortunately. But I mean,
I'm a new rider on that one, and I just hated it.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, 3 for 3, and we come from various backgrounds and various times of riding. I've been riding since I was 16 years old, basically 18, 16, somewhere in there, because I played around a little bit, but I got really into it at 18 years old. So being on these bikes for all this time and riding everything that I possibly can get around to, and just hoping that I would find another ADV bike, because I've been riding all these bikes this year and even last year, and everything is, except for the Yamaha Bolt, which, my gosh, that's still the most hated bike I have in my life. That's one bike review that I actually did that I never posted because Mama said, don't post anything if you can't say anything nice, right? That's what it's supposed to be. And I could not say anything nice about that Bolt at all. And like I said, I could say something about the V-Strom 1000, because there's some good things to say. The chassis, the suspension, and everything's ready. Work on that engine, get that thing refined, and that way you can start knocking off your competitors. But for now, it needs some work. So, at any rate, this is the Rabbit Hedgehog.
And Full Savage Furioso, or Mr. Brotherworth.
Or something. we got to work on that. We will catch you.
Vote,
pick, do something, figure it out. We'll catch you on that next review.
Yep. See ya.